So this morning, I'm going to be talking about some just generalized tips on if you're monitoring, what should I do, what should I avoid? It's not, how do I do monitoring? I got 10, 15, 20 minutes. We can't do a 3-day workshop in that amount of time. But there's some common things that I've seen go right and some common things that I've seen go wrong. So I'm just going to give you guys some tips. If you are an established practitioner like Helen, maybe you'll learn something. I hope that there's a nugget in there for you to take home. But with that, let's get started here, because advice is good, right? Sometimes you get some information that just totally transforms your program and your concepts of what you're going to do when you go out and try to accomplish your project. So the biggest thing that I've noticed is folks that start doing a water quality monitoring project or a citizen science project with their community, or if it's just a single person trying to go out there and do something right for where they live, it's having a question. What are you trying to accomplish? Yeah. You may recognize that where you live, things aren't fantastic. You want to do something, but that's not enough to get started. You have to have that question. We have to move beyond our concerns and be single-purposed. We have to be driven to answer that question. We need to be able to utilize the science that we're employing, be able to use that data, share that data, and try to then interpret the results and work with watershed groups, agencies, others, so that we can see that change that we're trying to move towards. We have a polluted water body, let's get to a clean water body. But if you happen to just want to go out there and generate good information, you can. Just make sure that the people that you're going to be giving that data to know that you exist and that you're going to be giving them information. They want that information. You're getting feedback so that the data you're collecting is going to be properly received and utilized. You just don't show up and say, here's 10 years worth of data, use it, and expect it to get used. Okay. Next big tip, 2 major things you have to put together before you get started after your monitoring question is putting together a monitoring plan. How you anticipate going out there and getting information, and then a QAPP, a QAP, a Quality Assurance Project Plan. Some people just call those project plans for short. However you call it, make one. No matter how intensive your program is or isn't, we have tools available so you can document the quality of your data. So you have to have those 2 things at a minimum. But I have a whole lot of other things on the screen that you should have as well, and I can help you develop those things. But you got to have those first 2 things. Once you have those in place, you manage your entire program with that goal in mind. It's super important that everybody that comes to your program, paid, volunteer, otherwise, they understand what you're trying to do and can support you with that goal in mind. Whether they're giving you a check or giving you time on the weekends, you're supporting the program for that one purpose, which is to, get data on this creek, get data on this swimming hole before the swimmers show up, things like that. It's extremely important to know exactly what you're doing, because we're going to try to put together all these different objectives and then designing our monitoring plan and do it adaptively. So after your first year, second year, third year, you can go back and do those things that help us get to where we need it to be. So it's putting together not just a plan of attack, but a roadmap for the future. If you don't have that first question, you're not going to get there. And when you're working in this world, it's a little different if you're in an agency, a little bit. But if you're working as a nonprofit, grassroots organization, know that there's a continuum. As you want your data to be utilized, you want your data to have better QA, you want your data to be used for legal purposes, the time you invest, the rigor, and the dollar amount that you have to allocate increases. So if you're just doing education, want your community to understand what dissolved oxygen is, what pH is, what fecal indicator bacteria are, the education's on the low end. Want to do visual observations on a habitat corridor? Add a little bit QA into that. If you're planning on documenting that a water body has toxic sediments and that you want this water body to be looked at in terms of potential 303D listing, so impaired water body, you're going to have very good QA and document everything and use probably EPA approved standards and above to document the chemistry, the toxicity, the problem in those sediments. Costs go up. Okay. So that's the real world that we're working in. Okay. So primary question, what do we love? What are we answering? And then how are we going to invest ourselves, our community, and our program? It's not free, right? So we're going to go all the way into the spectrum. We want our data to be used in a legal context. We're going to have some expenses. The good thing is community science is cost effective. There's huge value. A lot of times when we go out and do a project, a large ticket item is time. So if we have community members coming to us with their time, there's cost savings there. And if we have a good program, those volunteers stay with us, so we don't have to continue to invest in training. So a lot of fantastic value in our communities if we can do these programs. Oh, and part of that is what kind of resources do I have? Not just in dollars, but who can contribute some element to helping me with my project? Is it a laboratory? Is it data scientists? Who can provide me with what I need? I like to make a wish list. Not always money that I'm wishing for. It's things I need to get done. So if somebody has a microscope they're not using, hey, I need a microscope. That'll save me from having to raise money for a microscope. Have that needs list. Next big thing is I have a lot of folks that just want to come and contribute. They want plug and play. Eric, I don't have time for a monitoring plan. I don't have time for a QAPP. We just want to do something. What can I do? Just plug it in and do something. Well, we do have some programs available to you, so you don't have to invest yourself into developing a monitoring question, QAPP, all those things. Cynoscope, it's a program for harmful algal blooms. But if you don't want to invest yourself into the whole Cynoscope program, there's just the Bloom Watch. It's just an app working with the community members so they can go out there and document when there's a potential harmful algal bloom. World Water Monitoring Day. It's an awesome project. You do that typically on World Water Day, and it goes through September. One event, or you can have multiple events, and it's just an outreach. We have groups that target fourth graders. I have groups that target adults on just doing simple water monitoring, no QA, no question, purely education. But the data, even though they may be using high-end equipment, can still be shared. So we have a source of anecdotal information that communities can go back to. Right now, July is Lakes Appreciation Week. Secchi dip-in has been going on for quite a while. Go out to your water body, lower a Secchi disc, make a Secchi disc with kids in your neighborhood, a scouting out organization. There's a lot of neat things you can do, just plug and play. Makes it easier if you just want to get involved. Want to do more than that? Don't be a copycat. Don't just take somebody else's project and boilerplate off of that. I get a lot of folks saying, hey, Eric, we want to do what they're doing. And so we have all their documents, we just changed our name. Well, they're in the Sierras and you're in Southern California at the beach. Different context, different questions. It's okay to model yourself after programs. Follow the breadcrumbs of success. Don't be a copycat though, okay? If you do want to follow those breadcrumbs, you do want to do something individualistic, we have a lot of resources available for you at the Clean Water Team's websites. So we have our website, we have YouTube channel, we have a lot of resources available to help you develop your program, sustain your program. If this is ground zero for you, it's how do I get started, period. I don't understand how the water world of California works. We have those resources for you. And we have partners that can help as well. So the National Water Quality Monitoring Council does have a citizen monitoring element. EPA has some tools. There's great stuff available for you outside of the clean water team as well. And it's perfectly fine to start small. You don't have to go after big giant grants. You don't have to have huge giant questions. Start small, focus on success, and grow your programs. This also helps with sustaining your program and maintaining volunteers because you have the time to invest in your project. We live in a world with lots of increasing methodologies, methods. Cell phones weren't really hot when I was a beginning biologist. We had these big giant things that weighed about 10 pounds, right? That wasn't even the battery. The battery was another 30 pounds, right? So we have a lot of emerging technology, but it has to be proven. If you're going to take stuff that is brand new, nobody's ever used it, make sure that it's going to give you usable data that's valid. Make sure it's going to be usable for answering your question and shareable as well. For training, a lot of volunteers may come from a background where they don't like to be in front of a classroom. They don't want to speak. They don't want to be a focus of attention for their training. But training is very important. So how do I get around that? You invite Eric. You invite Helen. You find somebody that can do it for you. Do it side by side so that you can learn to become a trainer. Because when I went to college, they didn't have class on training, how to be a teacher. It was, here's your degree, get in front of the class and do it. Right? That's not very helpful. You can also do partner training. If there's another organization that's doing training, bring all your volunteers together. What's great about that is conformity and uniformity, consistency, and your prediction of comparable data, because everybody's being trained at the same time on the same stuff, using the same instrumentation, and hopefully calibrating against the same standards as well. A lot of value in that. Next tip is retraining. So your volunteers went to a big, robust training, spent a whole weekday learning stuff. They got their pizza, they got their t-shirt. They don't want to show up the next year for a retraining because I've been trained. I know what I'm doing. I'm competent, right? Yeah. Well, it's beyond that. We have to be accountable to our QAPP for our programs. So we can utilize our resources and leverage. But for retraining, it's not about retraining your volunteers. It's about putting your quality assurance project plan into place. It's making it actionable. You can blame the QAPP. You can blame me. Eric says we have to do retraining. Whatever you have to do to get your volunteers to an event for retraining, do it. If you start dangling the carrot that Eric, the Clean Water Team Coordinator, said we have to do this. Our quality assurance project plan says we have to do this. Your volunteers will show up because they see, wow, that's something I have to do. It's not about me. It's about them. It's about our data. It's about our QAPP. It's about our organization's commitment, not my individual commitment. How many here have a fantastic memory? For those of you not in the room, nobody's hands went up. Some folks have fantastic memory. I'm not one of those people. It's great to have instructions, crib notes, whatever you need to have in the field or in the laboratory to walk you through the steps you need. How to fill out the form, how to utilize your meter. Cheating is cool. You're not in college, right? If you get a job, you're getting paid, you have the instruction manual with you, you go through the steps, you push the buttons, end of the day, you go home, right? Same thing if you're monitoring as a non-paid individual. It's not cheating. It's producing data responsibly. So don't be afraid of not knowing everything. Volunteer management is huge. Again, when you're becoming a scientist, they don't teach you how to become a volunteer management guru, but they exist. You can reach out to the volunteer management and volunteer organizations in your county. If you can't find them, you can go to the governor's website, and we do have an Office of Volunteerism in the state. We have a lot of folks in the room that are with AmeriCorps. Okay, the Governor's Office of Volunteerism runs the AmeriCorps program in the state of California. So they have a lot of tools and resources for you if you've never managed a volunteer project before. Now, credibility is huge. I don't have to dwell on that today. Fortunately, within the rest of the day, we're going to have folks talk about quality assurance project plans, metadata getting recorded into CDN along with your data. We have some great resources being presented for you today. There's a wide range of science that people can contribute to as a non-professional scientist or as a professional scientist doing something on their own time. And any project can go about documenting the quality of their data. So EPA just released earlier this year a series of resources to help citizen science projects. It consists of basic instructions, some forms, how they have been filled out by others, and then you can also download these as a blank PDF or blank Word documents. So at the very low end, doing education outreach, anecdotal data collection, all the way up to rigorous studies, we have resources for you for your QAPPs. So the slide I have up right now is EPA's original QAPP guideline for volunteer monitoring. Yeah. That goes back to the 90s. So they have a whole updated suite. But we still utilize EPA resources, and then we have wonderful resources here developed by the SWAMPS IQ program within the water boards. I want to dwell just for another minute on quality assurance project plans, because these are some things that probably won't pop up in the presentations. And it's about being focused on your question and making sure all the elements of your QAPP fit. If you're in your watershed and you're collecting samples wherever a bridge is, because that's easy, quick access, am I going to be able to describe what's happening in my watershed? Well, it's probably going to depend on if those bridges are where you need to get that data. Otherwise, you're going to be describing the water quality of your watershed or section of a watershed where those bridges are. That's a different question. Want to change your question to that one? Fine. If you don't, you're going to have to change your monitoring stations in context to the original question. And have feedback from your volunteers. I have a cartoon here of a river over time. Originally, they were monitoring in the main stem, right? They're in the river. But because of a drought situation, things dried up. So instead of going to the location in the main stem, they went to the GPS coordinate. So now they're collecting data on a creek, not the main stem. So make sure that you're getting feedback from your volunteers so that you can ensure the data that you're collecting is usable. Thank you for your time.